Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Kerrie Jordan. Welcome to our show where we hear from manufacturing and supply chain leaders who are driving the future of these industries. Today, I'm speaking with Prashant Shah, the head of supply chain and operations at SwagUp. SwagUp is an API first swag management platform that simplifies the process of creating, managing, and distributing branded merchandise for companies of all sizes. It's built on the mission to make swag simple. Founded in 2017 and headquartered in New Jersey, SwagUp offers end-to-end services including design, production, warehousing, and global fulfillment, all managed through a centralized, user-friendly online dashboard. Now, SwagUp has earned the reputation for its fast-growing, tech-forward approach, and it's served thousands of global teams with creative, on-brand merchandise solutions. In 2024, the company was acquired by BDA, expanding its reach and capabilities while maintaining its innovative spirit and customer-first culture. My guest, Prashant Shah, is a global supply chain executive and strategic operator with over 15 years of experience driving large scale transformation, operational excellence, and revenue growth across high growth and PE backed organizations. He is known for leading integrated AI enabled supply chain ecosystems. I'm really looking forward to this. He's held multiple leadership positions throughout his career and is a Marine Corps veteran. Prashant, welcome and thank you for joining the show.
Thank you, Kerrie. This was an amazing intro. I don't know if I can do better than that, introducing myself, but thank you.
Well, I do want to hear more about your background. What led you to Swag Up and what throughout your career has brought you to supply chain?
Sure. So just a little 30 seconds about myself. I grew up as a first generation immigrant in the US. I came over here when I was 20 years old from India. So right away, I started learning a hustle very, very early. Served in the US Marines for from 2001 to 2009. Led multiple operations in multiple war zones, which helped me to build a discipline and grit within my character. One of the things I did was transition into the corporate leadership roles from the military right after I left the military across all supply chain operations, logistics departments, which also helped exist about four companies throughout my tenure, which is also three of them were PE backed, which helped me understand how the corporate works, PE works, private organization works, and also a startup works. And the one thing I definitely learned is from the military, from the business, and what my niche is turning chaos into clarity. And that's where I tend to thrive.
John, thank you for your service, first of all.
Welcome.
Second, I love that you said turning chaos into clarity. That is, it's really well articulated because when I think about supply chain and all the, conversations that we've had with different supply chain executives, chaos seems to be the constant. What had happened? What are some examples of that chaos maybe that you've experienced, where you've had to create clarity for your team, for your organizations in order to, sort of help achieve the goals that you've had for your organization?
There is always any given point in an operation or supply chain side of it, there's always going to be chaos because you're dealing with people, process, technology, financials. Something always going to miss at some point is a seesaw perspective. Something is up, something is down at any given point. And the chaos, I will say, and getting into the clarity side of it, is basically having a leadership style where you can step back, understand what the real issues are, ask why behind the whys, and figure out what the root issues that they have. That impacts everything else. There's always going to be chaos, but I think understanding what they're creating those priorities and going after those priorities is where the leadership truly comes, supply chain leadership truly comes, and letting the organization know that what are the top three priorities we're going to achieve within this quarter or this annually, and that will help the overall vision of the organization.
Now, I know leadership is really important to you. You mentioned it quite a few times there, and throughout your career, you've definitely, helped your teams achieve so many milestones. If I could ask you to maybe expand a little bit on how your military experience influences the way that you lead supply chains today and your teams, maybe the way you see leadership?
So in the military, through the military experience, I will say the one thing came out very clearly that logistics brings war. Like we continue to say that in the military that if we want to win wars, logistic is the way to go. And same thing in business. In the Marines, we always plan for worse. We had contingency for every single scenario we can think of. And by doing so, our mindset has built that resilience around it. And that leads to having clarity in chaos that
Yeah.
we talked about. And what that does is it gives an ability to lead under pressure, right? And that translates usually, 101 to the crisis management in any supply chain, anywhere, any industry you can go into. And I would say most of all, I would say one thing that really helped me in the military perspective is how to lead from the front, right? We used to say that no spreadsheets can replace that you build the trust in the trenches. And that's always true. And supply chains are always chaotic. So we have to lead from the front.
Well, can I ask you, given your experience running supply chains, here we are recording this in 2025. Would love to do some myth busting with you. What are some misconceptions that executives continue to have about supply chains these days?
The biggest one I've always seen in my 20 plus years or 15 plus years in the corporate world is that cost savings equals to supply chain success. That is the biggest one out there when I'm looking at it. Too many organizations still treats supply chain departments at their back office functions, where mostly those functions are focused on price tags and freight lanes and so forth. But in reality, it's the front line of the brand reputation. It's is the front line of customers' trust, is the front line of margin velocity. So it's not just about being cheaper, but it's more so about getting faster, smarter, more adaptable, more agile in the supply chain function. And that's the myth that every organization should go after and understand that cost saving plans are done probably 2005 in early organizations. After that, we are true P&L departments that can bring a lot of revenue and retain the customer.
So, how do you do it? What is the secret? How do you transition from the cost center to a profit center?
I would say one of the things that I have always done is having our supply chain metrics that is directly associated and aligned with our revenue goals or any sort of I would say sales team goals. I think that is one of them, and one of the KPIs that I always use is margin per shipment. That is very important for any physical product that the organization is ready to ship out to the customer. We also need to make sure that we have a rationalization around SKUs that we have. We need to reduce the last mile failures. There are a lot of them. We use outside carriers, inside carriers, doesn't matter, but there are a lot of last mile failures that we need to figure it out and also do vertical integration wherever it makes sense. We don't need to have a full control of all sides of the operation, but every organization should look into it as, okay, what can we bring inside the house and don't give it to another company or another organization to do it for us, because that's a leverage that you can always use to retain the customer. Another part of the ones that we use is unlock your data. Every organization has so much data, and using that data towards price leveraging with suppliers or creating a competitive price within the within the industry, creating smarter bundles through selling it to the customers. That really helps also to reach in customers, get new revenues, and so forth, and transform, I can say, customer experience. That is additionally what usually supply chain does through fulfillment, through the last mile deliveries, make it a competitive edge. I don't think so. A lot of companies looks at their supply chain, that supply chain can bring the competitive advantage for them in the industry, and a lot of them not utilizing supply chain organization that way.
That's interesting because you're grounding it in metrics and data and then translating that to the competitive advantage that it really can create through customer experience, through
Right.
on-time deliveries. So would you maybe share more about SwagUp? Because, I was looking at the website. It is such a fascinating organization. It's really fun making swag simple. We all love swag. So could you share about, maybe what I'm curious, what are some of the more popular products? What are some of the common challenges that you
I,
face?
I would say it's the industry itself is so fragmented in a promotion industry itself that it's very hard to continue to be that one person that you go to. Usually, when you need to order something, you have a hoodie or a mug or a pen or notebook. Usually, what companies are very used to going to a different vendors or different suppliers and then bring them into the office and try to put it together and everything. What SwagUp has done is made it very easy for them. It's a one-stop shop. You go online, you look at all the product. We have more than 5,000, 6,000 products online. Select it, bundle it together. We bring everything in-house. We make it nice and neat. We house it for the customers. We also ship it wherever they want it to throughout the years and make it very easy. So now the individuals like HR organizations, through chief of staff organizations, they don't have to worry about those things. They can just literally go online and figure things out from there. It's very self-explanatory website. Our user interface is excellent. And that's something that has SwagUp has created in the promotion industry that makes them kind of a little weapon for the industry itself. And that's something a lot of organizations trying to do now.
Interesting. So, what sort of technologies have you chosen to implement?
Everything is internally built. We do have certain CRMs that we use
Yeah.
or and auto management like Salesforce and so forth, but most of them are internally built. And that's where we also see ourselves as a promotional company, but we also see it as a tech company.
Interesting. So, when it comes to some of the latest and greatest emerging technologies, what are some that you're starting to leverage, thinking about leveraging? And of course, Prashant, I'm thinking about AI and how
Right.
AI might be playing a role here.
I would say in supply chain and what I've been looking around talking about, yes, AI is definitely there. It's not going anywhere. We are definitely going to use it. But one of as the other question you had, which I should have answered in that, like about the myth,
Yeah.
it does not replace humans.
Hmm.
Like, it only amplifies our judgments. And that's the one thing a lot of people still learning about the AI, because AI only going to spit out what we want that information to be coming out after we ask that question to the AI. And I'm not talking about ChatGPT. I'm just talking about regular AI functions or AI algorithms that's built within our organizations, right? However, on the flip side, AI is definitely great in demand sensing to our route optimization, right? Within supply chain, that's extremely important. What it also does is shortens the decision cycle from days to minutes. A lot of time we are looking for those data and we are trying to prep for it. AI can give us in a split of minutes. And that way, our decision making can be much, much faster. Before we used to do forecasting, now we are doing demand generation. That's the big difference when you use an AI. And of course, there's a risk of other internal micro or macro level perspective could be a risk of weather, risk of politics, the risk of labor issue, or international politics. You never know on that side of it. But when we're using AI, I think the demand we can generate or we can implement what demand expectation is going to be rather than just forecasting, which usually forecast is very off. And I would say the biggest shift I see in supply chain via AI is helping us to be more proactive rather than reactive. And I think that's going to be the biggest shift with AI in supply chain, which I've seen on a daily basis.
And it's really interesting how you said AI helps to amplify human judgment. I think that's a really great way to put it. And you were saying earlier about the importance of data being, fundamental to the way that, organizations need to be, thinking about supply chain in order to transform it from a cost center to a profit center. And if you have that quality data and you're applying AI, that can really help, humans then to make more informed decisions. When it comes to forecasts and being more proactive, to your point, has this fundamentally changed or new technologies fundamentally changed the way you think about forecasting? Or is it more like another tool that you could use or that your team members could use?
As I say, it shortens the decision making. That gives leaders like myself to do other things. Before it was a lot of data. Everyone has a lot of data. Now we have to assemble it, dissect it how we want it to. It takes sometimes days or weeks if it's on Excel sheets and whatnot. Now we can just dump everything in there, and it can just literally two sentences of what we really want to populate. It will populate for us. So that's where it's becoming a really, how can I say, more so about AI being lethal for us, and it's a part of the process for us, making sure that we get the information on a split seconds, so that we can make decisions faster. I think that's where I see the biggest gain.
Yes, it's going to be, I mean, it already is game changing, truly transformative. Now, when you think about applying technologies like AI or other technologies and digitizing processes across the supply chain, do you have a framework of how to make those decisions, where to start, where to go next?
I do have a general framework because every organization, any given point is a different game. As I said, different chaos. We come up with a different type of solution. But I always start with where the friction costs the customer. Basically, I also look for bottlenecks that are very manual, slow, repetitive, in many formats. And then I ask myself, my team, to figure out where digitization will improve our decision making, our visibility, improve our speed. And then we go ahead and implement those functions. Another part of that is always, we always do, or I always do pilot for cross-functional inputs, because that will bring out the issues under the surface that we do not know. Because tech does not just solve process issue, but it will also help out with people and process alignment as well.
When you are working with your team members and then going to apply these new technologies, say you've gone through the decision making framework, you've decided to do it, was there ever a time where you had made maybe a more counterintuitive decision and it actually improved supply chain efficiency?
Many times, that's the whole purpose of being a leader, right? So
Yes, true.
I wouldn't name the company, but at one of the companies, what I did was I slowed down an outbound process in the warehouse by almost 4 hours. And it's very hard to listen to this if you ever work in the warehouse industry, if you're a supply chain leader, but I did that. I did that. The reason behind that was that I started seeing a lot of returns coming back to the distribution center from the clients and customers for the mistakes that we were making. When I made that decision, of course, everybody panicked. My boss calls me and say, "What are you doing? Why are you delaying it by 4 hours?" Well, on the flip side, there are companies they wanted to do same day shipping, and you're doing the other way. However, there was a trust in me. The team trusted me. My supervisors trusted me and everything. And what we realized that our returns, which was by 20% returning back to us, it dropped down to only 2 to 3% within that quarter. Because now slowing down the process, people were getting a breathing room. People were paying attention to what their packaging or packing were. They were also not using the packing materials that are too large than the product itself, which was also costing us on the logistics side of it, because now the carriers are going to charge us more because the packages are bigger than it should be. And we all have been through. We get packages in our houses. I order a small item, and the package can hold probably 20 of those. It was all wrapped put in with the bubble wraps in there and God knows what else just to fit it in. We don't want our team to do that. We want them to use the minimum amount of material that still can secure the products, but also take that time to do the right thing the right way. And I always tell everyone, I said, sometimes slowing down in the right places will let you speed up somewhere else.
Well, on behalf of all of us receiving packages, thank you because definitely don't need that much bubble wrap, I'll tell you that. So that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So kind of along these lines of maybe some unexpected decisions, what sort of dangerous assumptions do you think other companies make when they're trying to scale their supply chains and maybe they think it's going to be a good idea and it ends up backfiring?
I would say there are a bunch of them. I will make it a very generic answer onto this because I have seen that everywhere.
Yeah.
I would say the one thing I continue to hear from the founders or the CEOs or the C-suite organization when I was in the manager role all the way up to now. So I have learned the lessons too. And the one thing I continue to hear is that whatever worked yesterday will also work tomorrow. It does not work that way. Whatever the company has done to get to the $10 million revenue, it will not work during when they are hitting $100 million revenue,
Yeah.
right? Usually, growth will often expose those cracks. And that's the one thing a lot of organizations are working towards it, but I'm not sure if everyone's understanding that. I think the most dangerous part of it is that you don't feel it until it breaks. And that point is already too late. So I always tell my team is like, we build flexibility early. We don't need to wait for it. That's the proactive nature a leader can take in a given day to build flexibility in their team and the processes and the technology way early. Because when you have to scale, you don't scale by brute force. You just scale by design. And that design has to have a flexibility in it.
I love it. Design has to have flexibility. Absolutely. So in your career, you have gone through different acquisitions. It from your perspective, what role does a supply chain leader have in the acquisition process?
You're asking some questions that a lot of supply chain leaders will love to answer that with a lot of emotions. That's number one. I would say the answer to your question is massive, right? Like
Mhm.
supply chain, I look at as the backbone of any product industry. But yet often, a supply chain operation is brought in very, very late, or I would say too late within the decision making, towards the decision making. A lot of times, operation team doesn't even know that that was happening until the decision is made during the acquisition. Another part is during the post acquisition, usually the success is hinged on integrating systems. We all know that could be through SKUs, through integrating vendors, logistic networks, which is all supply chain drivers. That's the whole point about post acquisition. I have been through three exits within my career and one more as a part of a board member. So my advice to any supply chain leaders to make sure that during the due diligence, have your supply chain leaders or operation leaders to be at the day one planning, and that will mitigate a lot of risk leakage in the future. Operation is where the synergies are, but if you don't use that, that's where the landmines are too.
Mhm.
So that if you don't landmines, I mean to say landmines are as well as hidden in there. And that's why operation needs to be brought in first day.
Brought in much earlier, as you said, first day.
Yes, yes.
So that is very interesting as far as when an organization is looking to go through the acquisition process. And there's so much acquisition happening in the industry. When it comes to being a supply chain leader, or maybe if you're speaking with other organizations that are looking to take their supply chain to the next level, what advice do you give them?
I would say stop running behind efficiency. Design your team processes tech around resilience. That's number one. Number two, create a diverse supplier base. Everyone is using some sort of supplier base around it. Try to have as many as you can smartly nearshore suppliers, and invest tools for real-time visibility. That's a huge one in supply chain industry itself. Build the teams that can adapt and not just execute. Supply chain is about execution, but if they cannot adapt, if they cannot pivot, at the right time, then that team is going to be useless and you're going to continue to turn your team. And it's just a matter of time. People get burned out. So
Great
build it
advice.
for adaptability rather than just execute.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you. Well, Prashant, was there anything that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to share?
Mm, No, I think you hit a lot of good questions where, it was very good. And you went deep into those things.
We talked about some pretty interesting stories that you had shared that had happened to you. So thank you. Thank you for sharing those stories. Well, this has been wonderful. So if anybody wants to, get to know you more or connect with you or maybe get to know SwagUp, where would you send them?
Definitely my LinkedIn profile. It has all the information you need to work with me, as well as for SwagUp. It's just swagup.com, and look it over and give us a feedback if you have any feedback. I would love to work with that.
Excellent. We will include the links in the show notes. Prashant, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kerrie. Appreciate it.
That was Prashant Shah, head of supply chain and operations at SwagUp. And to everyone listening, thank you for being a part of the future of manufacturing.